Hello everyone. Hi. Welcome to Flutter Festival Workshop Day 1. We'll be beginning with the session in a few minutes. So this is the first workshop of the 4 sessions that we are going to have. I see the count increasing. Just a few more minutes and we'll begin. Hello everyone. And you can see the social media links in the chat box. Meanwhile, you can follow the GDSC CVRGU social media handles. All right, so let's move ahead. So for the 4 sessions workshop, this is the agenda. In the first session, that is day 1, we'll be having knowledge. We'll be gaining knowledge about Dart and its operations, basics of Flutter, and how to install Flutter in your system. Because in the further sessions, we'll be having hands-on workshop for creating a basic Flutter app, and that app is going to have a main screen, that is home screen, navigation drawer, other how to navigate with buttons to the second screen, other widgets and functionalities. So this is the agenda for day 2 and day 3, and in the final day we'll be linking a Flutter app with Firebase. So we'll get to know about Firebase as well, and hands-on tutorial on how to link the Flutter app with Firebase. So let's begin. What is Flutter? Flutter is basically Google's UI toolkit for building beautiful natively compiled applications for mobile, web, and desktop, all from a single code base. It works with the existing code used. It also works with existing code used by developers and organizations around the world. And Dart is the language which is used for Flutter development, and it is the foundation of Flutter. And below which you can see the 5 points are the features of Flutter. The very first point, which is open source. Open source means its code is free for all the audience and all the users and developers all around the world, and it has built-in material design, rich motion APIs, and other widgets for both Android and iOS apps separately to make more user-friendly and elegant apps. Next, we see hot reload. As we can see, hot reload, it's a unique feature of Flutter, which means that all the changes that you make in the code will be reflected instantly. The updates on the ongoing development phase of the app and the which the developers accomplish on the project will be displayed on time. You don't have to wait or rebuild the project again and again. It will be dynamically displayed on whichever emulator or whatever device you are working on. Next up is rich widgets. Those who are familiar with Android will know that Android has views, layouts, and other things, but in Flutter, all of them are the widgets only. We don't have any another layout or anything else. And Flutter can also allow developers to create custom widgets. Not only what it is available by the developers, but we can create. Next comes single code base, like I mentioned, for cross-platform development. It can it doesn't need separate codes for Android, iOS, or web. Only a single code that we'll see later that in a Dart file compiles to all the platforms. And its Firebase support. The Firebase support with Flutter enables developers to make most of the use as a backend. Developers use this for developing scalable apps. Scalable apps means like the same, it will be used for all the changes that we make in different platforms. Next, we'll discuss about Dart, which is the foundation of Flutter, and it not only powers Flutter apps, but it is also the core of many formatting, analyzing, and testing codes. It is technical envelope that is particularly suited for client development. Like client development means not server-side development, but client-side, which you see, which a user experiences on their devices. Other than that, we know that we should know that Flutter that Dart is an object-oriented language, that it uses the concept of classes and objects. Classes and objects are very essential for app development, and that's why Dart provides faster runtime environment because of its object-oriented programming. And it compiles to ARM and 64-bit machine code for mobile and backend development, and compiles to JavaScript when working for Flutter for web. And it is the feature of Dart as well, which provides Flutter as its hot reload feature, and it is dynamic in nature, as it is we can explicitly specify the variable, and it is an optionally typed language as well. We can take a look at the official site. So this is the official site for Dart, and you can see its features, like it is optimized for UI, it provides productive development, it is fast on all platforms, and you can go ahead on this site and take a look yourself. And you can also try Dart online as a web app, or you can download it. We'll see later on how to use Dart online. So let's move ahead. Basics of Dart. So we'll be practicing Dart code for those who have completed the quest of the Flutter Festival. They might be familiar with the Dart programming language because it has been taught in the labs of Quick Labs and Cloud Skill Boost. And in that there was many basic programming about Dart, like variables, constant, finite loops, flow control, list, maps, and other structures as well. We'll have a quick recap of that. And other than that, we'll be taking a look on the classes and objects, on how to take input using Dart, and asynchronous programming using Dart. Let's take a look at the keywords that are available, because before we start programming, we should know the keywords that we can't use. So these are the keywords that Dart uses. The thing about keywords is that we cannot use keywords as our variable names or identifiers or any other names. They have their separate functionality, and Dart has 61 keywords till date. So let's begin. We'll be using Dartpad, like I mentioned, the official web app, which allows us to practice Dart code online. This is it. This is the Dartpad. You can also go ahead on your browser and practice with me. Like you can see, originally some code I have been practicing, so that is written. And we can run it like this. In the console on the right side, you will get the output, and you can also get the documentation if you click on any of the functions or methods or whatever. Like on the print function, we can see this is the documentation. So let's move ahead. So the basics of Dart, this is the code that we are going to practice. So let's pop it, and I'll explain each and every function about it, because it can be time consuming typing all the codes at once. Okay. So this is the basic code. We'll take a look on all of it one by one and commenting out the rest. So the first code, the first line which you see is the main function that we have in any programming language. When we run this code, we can see we'll see that this is first variable declaration, in which int variable is declared about days in a week, and it is constant. So it can't be changed if we use it anywhere else in our program. That is the function of the const keyword. Like if we run it, it will print hello and the variable that we have mentioned here. So next ahead, we'll see about the final keyword and the print function. The final keyword also has a similar function. The final, when we declare a variable as final, if we use it in any other method or we try to change its value, it may give some error. So moving ahead, let's work with some lists. In this first line, we declare a list. This is the syntax. We first mention the type, that is, it is a list, and the types of list elements, that is string, the name that we are going to give to our list, and the elements of the list. With the first print command, we'll see that we print all the names of the week which are in the list. With the second, like we can see all the list elements have been printed. And similarly, we'll also see days of the week, like map. Map is like a dictionary. There is some error in the code. Okay, we'll see. We are going to run more commands. We'll move ahead to loops. First of all, we'll see for loop. Those who are familiar with other programming languages also must know that this is a for loop in which it will print as many times as we specify our print command. So it starts with the variable I. It will specify the number of iterations, and it will go up to 5. It will start from 0 and it will stop below 5. One decrement before 5. So in the next run, we will see that hello is printed 5 times, hello 1, whatever our command was. And next we'll take a look at while loop. So in the while loop, we are taking help of the loop flag boolean variable, which will be the condition for the while loop. And as I am uncommenting out the codes, so this is the command. This is the variable iterator, int I is equal to 0, while with the condition, the loop flag that we have declared in front, and with I less than 4, that is, it will start from 0 and move till 4, and it will print hello and the variable I. Otherwise, it will turn the loop flag off and our code will stop at that loop. So that is the last So next we'll move. So this is the final hello 1, hello 2, hello 3 and hello 4. The 4 times this loop has iterated. So we'll move ahead. Let's move ahead to our next code, that is classes and objects. So first we'll declare class and learn about them. In this code, we will see that a class has been declared with the name Flutter Dev, and this is a constructor with a parameter. With in every class, there is a constructor which does some basic functions, and that constructor in this code is printing out whatever name that we are passing as parameter in it in the object, and it will print out the name with a Flutter developer. In the main function, we are instantiating the class as a variable and a new keyword. Like we can see, a Flutter dev class object is instantiated and the parameter passed is Jamie. If we run, it will print out the message, I am Jamie, a Flutter developer, because when the object is created, it refers to this class and it calls out this print function. So moving ahead, we'll learn how to take inputs using Dart, because when we are working with development, we have often have to take user inputs. So learning about inputs is a must. So this is the whole program. First of all, we'll import a package called dart::io. It will be used to take inputs whatever we need. And in the main function, first of all, we begin with taking string input. Like if first of all we'll print a message in through this code, and then this string variable is declared, and through the standard in stdin read line sync, it will read whatever we type in our console, and after that it will print the name and it will print a welcome message. The name will be the string that we have mentioned in our console. Yes, I can see this. It is very similar to Java because it is also object oriented. Next, we see that how to take an integer input. We'll prompt on the screen to enter a number. Then we'll declare a variable n int, which is of the integer type, and it will be passed from the console and it will be read. Originally, all the inputs are read as a string. So to convert it into integer, it has to be passed with this method int.parse. Now moving ahead, and while printing the output, we can print it with, like we take input using stdin, we can also write using stdout.write. So now we can run. There is some error compiling to JavaScript, unsupported import. I think we can try without the import. Let's write. I think there is some error in the imports because the Dart IO is not working, I think. Okay, so basically this is how we take input, and moving ahead, we'll see asynchronous programming with Dart. So asynchronous programming basically is used when we have to perform some of the tasks which are going in the background, and we also assign some other tasks. Like basically it is used, we have to wait for some operation to finish in synchronously, But within that time, we also have another operation, like we are fetching data over a network. Meanwhile, there is some other activity going on the screen. And if we want to write to a database or reading data from a file, on all these places, we use asynchronous programming. And on development, this is a very important feature. So we have to do this. And for this, Dart provides a future class. A future class is just a object that is used for asynchronous programming. We call its method as async function and the await keyword. These keywords declare that asynchronous function is going to be used hereafter. And this is the syntax on how we have to do asynchronous programming. Like if we move back, this is the future class program, and it is using delayed print function that takes seconds and message as parameter. And if we run, we can see that live word is printed first and is and good is printed a few minutes later. And that is what await function does, that the program is still running, but after 2 seconds the rest of the code is being printed. We can use this while we are integrating database in in our app, or we are using another network, some queries. So asynchronous programming is helpful in that. So moving ahead, another important feature in Dart is the null safety feature. That is, null safety is very important because often when our app crashes, null not receiving any data in it is the reason, and that is what null safety is used to prevent. Every time we compile our app, our another extra memory is being used for checking that whether the input or whatever data we are working with is null or what. So we already have sound null safety available in Dart, which reduces the extra memory. It makes the runtime faster, and it also makes the app more productive because we have already implemented that it is going to be null. So there's not going to be any extra memory allocated for error checking of null. And this is the operator, question mark operator, that is used to declare any variable whether it is going to be null. Like if in the program we can see after the int declaration there is a question mark, and it after that if a is also declared as null, it will still work. We will also see it on the Dart pad. Before that, I'll be explaining it. Next up, we see a declaration called a nullable list. In this, if the whole list is going to be nullable, for that we have given a question mark after the string bracket. And if in a list any internal item is going to be nullable, for that we have declared internal string list item as nullable. So let's check this out on our Dart pad. See, there is no error because if there was no question mark here and we would not have declared the string as nullable, we would have received an error. Like we can see there is error on line 3 because we have declared a variable as null, but we have not assigned in the beginning whether it is going to be null or not. Here the question mark operator can be used to provide null safety. And similarly in the list, this is going to be a nullable list. And if there is no list item assigned to it, but there is no error because we have given a nullable operator here. And in the second list that we see, there is a list item which is declared as null. If we remove the question mark here, we'll get an error because by default it expects the list to have list items which are not null. So this is how null safety works. Moving ahead, like we can declare a variable as null, we can also declare that a variable is never going to be null. For that, we use null assertion operator, which is a exclamation mark. So in the beginning, we have declared that it can be a function which is going to be null, and it returns -3. And it has been called in the variable integer c. If we remove the exclamation mark from here, that is the null assertion operator, we'll get an error in our program, because we have not assigned that it is not going to be null, but it is null. That is why but null assertion is not, advised in our program, because it often leads to errors in the program. Often we don't get values, and if we explicitly say that it is not going to be null, but somehow it gets a null value, then the whole program crashes. So let's move back. So our null Dart session is over, and in the null safety we have two more options. That is, we can assign late keyword. Late keyword is used when we want to know that we have to assign a value to our variable, but we won't assign it immediately. We'll be using it after some time, like after a function is called, or after any other method, or after a screen is loaded. In that case, we declare a string or any variable as null. Like here we have declared a class meal with a variable string, but it is declared as late because the description will be provided later after the meal is called, or it is not passed as parameter. For that, late keyword is used, and it is also a part of the null safety feature in Dart. And another, not last, we have many other features, but for our basic programming, these are the four features that we'll be using. Another one is type promotion. Like I mentioned originally, Dart expects the variables to be non-nullable. So if we declare it null, or we check if it is null sometimes, then afterwards, even if it is not declared, it automatically promotes its type to null. So that is how, like here, we are checking whether the string is nullable or not here only. So afterwards, if any time it is checked and we find an error, it is not going to work well. This is type promotion. That is, once a type is declared, it automatically assumes the same type in the next scope as well. So this was all about null safety in the Dart. So we can move ahead now. After we have discussed about Dart, we must know about how Flutter development works. And everything works as a widget. Like I mentioned, there is a lot of widget in Flutter, and we can take a look at the widget catalog, because there are separate widgets for input, for interaction, for layout. Cupertino widget, this is basically for iOS apps. For images, icons, assets, animation, for all of it we have a different widget. We have a different widget for scrolling, for styling, for text. Like in Android we had views, but in Flutter we have widgets. And basically there are two types of widgets. One is stateful and one is stateless. And that is because we use widgets with data. Not all widgets may have data, and that widget are known as stateful widget. And the ones which don't have data, which only have to display information, are known as stateless widget. And state basically refers to the data. And the like dynamically, when we have to assign a value, like we do that with a checkbox, radio button, or an input text field, for that we use stateful widgets. Otherwise, just to display a text or icon or any button, we don't have to take in any input. For that we use stateless widgets. And as we'll move to tomorrow's session, we'll see about these all methods as well. So then you can move back to the slide and read it also. However, I'll tell you, there is going to be a build method in whatever Flutter app that we create, and using that build method we'll always get the stateless widget. And when we have to create a state from a widget, that is we have to take in data, so on that we will use this method and we'll return the final data using the state. And stateless widgets are used when a user have to change the UI dynamically, and like I mentioned, and the stateless widgets are used when the UI remains constant, just to display. On the right side, we'll see the name of few widgets like a scaffold, a sized box, and text, and many more. A scaffold basically displays the whole screen. We will look more about it later. Size box takes text, and it is a fixed sized widget, and many more. So let's move ahead. So now we'll take a walkthrough on how to install Flutter on your system, because Flutter, whatever we are going to build tomorrow, we need to have Flutter installed on your devices usually earlier only, because it may take a lot of space and a lot of network requirement. We will move to the official site. For Flutter installation, we will first install a Flutter SDK, and we'll also install an editor. An editor may be an Android Studio for Windows, or Xcode for iOS or MacBook, or a Visual Studio Code for both, whichever you are comfortable with. And for a device to run with, we need any emulator, or we can also work with a physical device connected to a USB cable, and it has to be set to developer mode. And apart from that, a browser like Chrome is a must for debugging. So let's take a look on how to do that. If we move to the Windows section, this is the requirement that we need. We need an operating system more than Windows 7 SP1 64-bit, and disk space is needed. Using this link, we can download the stable zip which is needed for Flutter SDK, and I have already downloaded it, so you can take a look. Like you can see Flutter Windows, this is what I downloaded, and using this you can extract it to whichever area you feel you have to install the SDK, but I would suggest you to install it in C drive and with a Flutter folder. Like you can see here. So this is how you can extract it. And after extracting, you will have to update your path to be able to use Flutter SDK on from any folder or any directory or any part of your system. So after you download it, you have to extract it and put in a C drive or any drive you feel you are good with. And like I mentioned about updating your path, so you can update your path with you can go to environment variables, and with to this path, you can edit it here, and you can see I have already added here this path. Similarly, you have to extract the folder Flutter zip, and you have to put the bin folders path here using this new, and you can add it. You have to, wherever you extract your Flutter zip, you go to that folder, and this bin directory, you can copy as path, and you can paste it here in the environment variable, and you will be able to use it from anywhere on your system. After you have updated your path, you can check whether it is accessible from any command line, command prompt. So let's move ahead. To check that, we will be using Flutter Doctor command. Because I have already installed the editor and Chrome and everything, so we don't need to, so you will not see any error. However, if you do after installing Flutter SDK, you will see a lot of cross marks. So you can see this is running. After you have installed the Flutter SDK, if you are working with Windows, you'll have to install Android Studio. It is mentioned like Chrome. Chrome is used for development of the web. Visual Studio, I have Visual Studio and Android Studio both on my system. So, however, it may not be necessary to have both, any one would do. So, and if you do not have, this is the error that you will see, Android SDK is missing. So you will have to install Android Studio from this link, and then you can either set up your Android device, like this is the option. I have Android Studio installed, so you can take a look at that also. This is the latest version of Android Studio. Before that, it was Arctic Fox, so it is okay if you have that as well. This is how Android Studio will look after you have installed. I'll also provide a link so that you can follow along if you miss. And you can set up the Android device. Setup means you have to enable the developer options using and USB debugging, so that whenever you run your app, you are able to see it on your device. And if not, you can also set up an Android emulator. But if your system isn't that does not have that processing power, I'll suggest you not to do that. Other than that, you can also use Visual Studio Code. So this was all about Flutter installation. And Chrome is already available most of the time, so I guess we don't have to discuss installation about that. And apart from that, we can also take a look at Mac OS. For Mac also, we have to install the SDK similarly, and after that we have to update our path, and we have to install Xcode instead of Android Studio on Mac. That is the software that we use for development on Mac devices. And like someone asked, is it installable on Linux? Yes, it is. So you can see it is installable on Linux also. And this is the tar file that you use, and on Chrome as well. So let's move ahead. So this was the basic idea about the day one. We'll be having a quiz hereafter, but before that, those who are attending may give their attendance in the chat box. So I hope you are filling up the attendance form. Swayam Ranjan Nayak, I think you have to fill the form. It's okay if you have written your name here also. So we'll be giving 3 to 4 minutes for filling up the form, and after that we'll move ahead to the quiz. The quiz is going to be about basics of Dart and Flutter, just a short quiz, but you must take part in it. So at 7:40 we'll start the quiz, and you'll have at least 1 minute for each question. You just have to write the option number in the chat box. And in the form you will find a YouTube username. That is because if you give correct answers in the quiz, and we have to, often we don't use real username, so we can track you down if you are the winner. Okay, so it's 7:40, we'll be starting the quiz. So let's watch the first question. Who invented the Dart programming language? So you can see the options: Dennis Ritchie, obviously Bill Gates, not. So you can type the options in the chat, the correct answer. The quiz is on YouTube itself. So the people in the back end will be noting who has answered first. So time is up. It's 7:41. Let's move ahead to the next question. So what is the output of this code? Is the code visible properly? I hope it is. So we already have the first answer. It's 7:42. It's just basic programming. So if you take a look closely, you'll get the correct answer. So moving ahead to the next question. This is another question in which you have to tell the output. There's a list and a for loop. If there is confusion with the question number, you can also type the options, like if it is 1 2 3 4, then 1 2 3 or 1 2 3 4. So it's 7:44. The next question: is Flutter a programming language? This is the easy one. We already know. I'm not expecting wrong answers in this. Okay, so it's 7:45. Time for next question. Which type of widget has mutable state in Flutter? You can guess through the state word, and mutable is anything that is changeable. So it's at 7:46. The quiz will be over, and we'll look at the correct answers. Okay, so time is up now. Let's move ahead. So this is the answer. Who invented the Dart programming language? The first, no, I think this was the third option. So this is the inventor of the Dart programming language. The second question was this output. You had to give the output for this. So what we see that there are two variables declared with the value -1 and -2, and there is another variable result that makes use of the ternary operator. This question mark here works as a ternary operator on the condition whether A is less than B. So if it evaluated to true, it would have given the output as A, otherwise B, and A is less than B as declared above. So the output is -1, and that is the answer. And in the third question, like a list is declared with values, list items 1 and 2, and we add two more items using the add method 3 and 4. Using this loop, we iterate from 0 up to 3. So that is what you have to take care that from 0, iteration will begin 0, 1 and 2, and the list items will be printed. So only 1, 2 and 3 will be printed because iteration stops before 3. So that is the output for the third question, 1, 2, 3. And is Flutter a programming language? No, because Dart is the programming language that is used in Flutter, and Flutter is a software development kit. It is not a programming language. And the last question, which type of widget has mutable state in Flutter? As I already discussed, state is only used in stateful widgets, and mutable, so it is only possible if we use stateful widgets. So that is the answer. This was an easy one. So we have come almost to the end of the session. So don't forget to RSVP for the session tomorrow, in which we are going to build an app from the scratch. And that app will have various features such as navigation, home screen, button click. Very basic, very basic. Even if you don't have any idea about Flutter, you can tune into it. So do join for the session tomorrow. We'll be having two sessions for the Flutter app creation, and in the last session we'll link it to Firebase. You can find the RSVP link in the chat box, and any other doubt then you can ask. And those who have already completed the quest about Flutter, you may have some idea about Flutter apps. So we'll be ending in a minute. Don't forget to RSVP for the next session. Okay, so thank you everyone. We'll be ending now.